talking a bit about what we found in the bushfires in Victoria, and I suppose the biggest thing I learnt was that self-organisation in a disaster, particularly within a disaster community, works so much better than, I suppose, what I call officials or agencies coming in and trying to do stuff. Because what tends to happen in a disaster is people come in and say, this is what we're doing, as opposed to saying, who's on the ground, what do you need, and how can we get it? So the town I worked in, Flowerdale, we would have a meeting at 9 o'clock every morning at the pub. 100, 150 people would turn up. They'd run every day for 6 weeks. And what would tend to happen is, in the morning, a couple of community leaders who effectively were almost not elected, but the crowd sort of said, you guys are the ones who know how to make things happen, sort of were thrust into these leadership roles. But instead of trying to tell people what they do, they would say, hey, we need water for the temporary village. So somebody says, hey, my mate works at the plumbers union, they can come in and help. We need some chainsaws and some barbecues. Does anyone know anyone at Bunnings? Yeah, I work there, I can sort that out. So what tended to happen was it became really much more like the group would get together at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then things would just spawn off. And during the course of the day, it was almost like a rolling meeting where not a sort of meeting, sit down and discuss stuff, but people would just turn up and say, hey, oh, you're there, can you do this, we need that. And social media played a part in it because we were the first community to set up a blog. We set up our own relief site because we knew that the money that was being donated was going to take a long time to work through the system. And the blog still runs today. I think we've had over 400 posts. We used a wiki to coordinate. There was about 26 organisations helped us build the first temporary village. And there were people from Andrew Forrest right through to the Plumbers Union and Woolworths and Coles and Leighton Constructions and the Electricians Union. All these guys, Telstra, just all jumped on board. And the only way to really coordinate all that with people sort of running around in a disaster zone was through a wiki. One of the first things we did from Deloitte was we took up 10 laptops that we had, and we grabbed some NextG cards. Telstra gave them to us, and we were able to set up little communication hubs around the place so people could have access, because obviously if your house burns down, your computer tends to go with it. The other things that were crucial, you would get container loads of clothes, most of which you wouldn't need, but there was no laundry. So Andrew Forrest gave us a industrial laundry, which still runs today and has become the almost number one thing in a disaster: get them a laundry. It's become the social hub of the place, and there's a whole heap of groups who have their own sort of washing days, and it's just, again, these fantastic. The other thing, food, feed them. We got a mob called the Hales Institute, a hospitality college. They came up, set up a marquee, and there was a place for everybody to go to eat. And that again built real community resilience, because people would come together at lunchtime at the end of the day. Just 1,001 lessons, but the biggest lesson for me was that I think the world relies too much and expects governments to be able to handle these massive disasters, when the reality is nobody's established or set up or has the sort of spare resources just to flick a button and make everything happen. But if you empower communities, if you get communities sort of thinking about self-organisation, they can make things happen for themselves.